Hello and welcome to the Intentional Brief, your weekly video update on the one big thing in cybersecurity news for growth stage companies, their investors, and management teams. I'm your host, Shay Colson, managing partner at Intentional Cybersecurity, and you can find us online at intentionalcyber.com. Today is Monday, October 21st, and we're seeing some new takes on old topics this week, namely ransomware. So no funny quips at the top. We're going to jump right in. This past Friday saw an interesting op-ed in the Financial Times from Ann Neuberger, the current U.S. Deputy National Security Advisor for Cyber and Emerging Technology here in the U.S., who previously has spent time as a senior advisor at the NSA and other places, with a title that read, quote, "The ransomware battle is shifting, so should our response," unquote. Other news outlets had headlines that were a bit more blunt, including CNBC, who wrote, quote, the government is getting fed up with ransomware payments fueling endless cycle of cyber attacks, unquote. So obviously, we continue to see these ransomware attacks in the news and other places, and we also see the struggle to recover. You may recall we mentioned last week Japanese electronics and watch company Casio getting hit with ransomware, mentioning them because they only owned up to it once the threat actors leaked their data on the dark web. Well, since then, Casio's week has gone from saying they have, quote, no prospect of recovery yet, to as of late last week, to now saying today that they hope to have their systems back online by the end of November, which again, it's October 21st, so we're looking at 6 weeks or so for a restoration for a company that does about $2 billion in revenue each year, which is quite a long time to be down heading into the holiday season. So as I read Neuberger's piece, I'm struck by a couple of things. The first is that it's just not clear to me how Ms. Neuberger thinks the ransomware battle is shifting. She calls out the usual players by name, Russia, North Korea. She includes some statistics on the volume of attacks and the amount of ransoms paid, and takes a couple of passing shots at cryptocurrency in general and the money laundering services that enable some of these payments to happen. But none of this is new, and this is all pretty well-trodden ground. So I guess I don't see what's new or what's shifting in the battle here. So the premise falls a little bit flat. Her suggested response then is, at least to me, big on rhetoric, but thin on actions. I think I do want to give credit first to a document she cites in her op-ed directly from the White House about a few select security controls that are effective in combating ransomware attacks. These controls are to, 1, have regular backups that you have tested, 2, update and patch your systems, 3, have an IR plan and test it, 4, get a pen test done, and 5, segment your networks. These are great controls, and they should be in place at your organization and at every organization. But the memo that she references is from April of 2021. It's October, almost November of 2024, again, leading me to wonder what has changed in the response, not just in the attacks. And so when she does this hand-waving later in the piece about, quote, enhanced cooperation within government and between countries, civil society, and private industry, that just doesn't seem to be a thing. And if it is a thing, it doesn't seem to be working. So this strategy of treating the symptoms and not the underlying cause really frustrates me when I hear these great opportunities to send a new message. You don't get this type of platform every day, frankly, quite rarely, particularly from someone in this senior of a role. I wonder if we missed our opportunity. Third, and perhaps most interestingly, is Ms. Neuberger's position on cyber insurance, calling out in particular policies, quote, covering reimbursement of ransomware payments that incentivize payment of ransoms that fuel cybercrime ecosystems. She calls this, quote, a troubling practice that must end, unquote. I was struck by this because she had just in the line prior to this suggested that, quote, the insurance industry can also play a constructive role by, among other things, requiring and verifying implementation of effective cybersecurity measures as a condition of underwriting its policies, unquote. This doesn't seem to me to be a feasible plan if you also want to drop ransomware as a coverage option from these policies. After all, cyber insurance against ransomware is one of the biggest drivers of those policies, and asking that industry to both support you as a validator of these controls, but at the same time limit or impact the financial mechanics that make the industry work seems like a non-starter to me. The conclusion of her piece, her closing paragraph, indicates, at least to me, that she's clearly aware of the issue that's actually driving all of this, imploring readers to, quote, pressure safe haven jurisdictions to take action to stem this destabilizing activity, unquote. But it feels like the US government simply isn't taking the actions that would materially address this issue with Russia. The UK risks falling into that same trap with their proposed cybersecurity and resilience bill, which will be coming up for debate soon. The key comment in this proposed legislation is a good one from some analysis also posted this week that says that, quote, given that ransomware and similar cyber attacks are often a traumatic experience for the victims, the effectiveness of this bill will depend on nuances such as making sure the government has adequate resources to help cybercrimes victims come forward rather than victimizing them even more. I think we can take a page out of the UK's book here in the US and quit blaming the victims, instead focusing on targeting the criminals. But I didn't see that in the way I'd hoped in this piece from Ms. Neuberger, and I think, again, that is a real missed opportunity. From a fundraising perspective, we saw a total of more than $10 billion in newly committed capital last week, with a good handful of announcements over $1 billion in size, indicating to me that there's still investment to be made, even in the run-up to the election. With that, a reminder that you can find links to all of the articles we've covered below. You can find back issues of these videos and written transcripts at intentionalcyber.com, and we will see you next week for another edition of the Intentional Brief.